You're listening to episode 2 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness researchers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Dr. Sam Himelstein joins us to speak about the Mind-Body Awareness Project. Mindfulness is not about getting into your happy place. There is hard work involved, speed bumps in the practice to be overcome, and the results can be not only transformative, but in some cases, life-saving. Context can be very difficult, and it is critical for teachers to develop a strong rapport and trust with those with whom they work. This is especially so with at-risk youth, and today's guest is at the forefront of that rewarding effort. Sam Himelstein is the Executive Director of the Mind-Body Awareness Project. As an adolescent, Sam was heavily involved in the juvenile justice system and was incarcerated on several occasions over a period of 3 years. He eventually turned his life around through connections with mentors, personal inner work, including mindfulness meditation, and the never-ending love and support of his parents. Sam received his PhD from Sophia University, where he is now Associate Core Faculty, teaching classes on the incorporation of mindfulness into psychotherapy in the Low Residency Master's Program. Sam completed the first published research for MBA entitled A Mixed Method Study of a Mindfulness-Based Intervention with Incarcerated Youth as his dissertation. He has been involved with the MBA for over 5 years in many different positions, including MBA instructor, program manager, and director of research, and has dedicated his career to working with high-risk and incarcerated adolescents. His knowledge and love for his work have been compiled in his book, A Mindfulness-Based Approach to Working with High-Risk Adolescents, published in April of 2013. Our guest today is Dr. Sam Himelstein. Sam, welcome to Present Moment.
How you doing, Ted?
So glad you could be here, and I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, but especially as I spent some time with you at the scientific conference this year. You're the Executive Director of Mind-Body Awareness Project based in California. Tell us at a high level, what's the mission of the organization?
Sure. Well, first, let me just say it's an honor to be on the podcast, and I've also appreciated our connections that we've fostered over the last couple of years at the conferences we've met at. The MBA project, it's something that's real close to my heart and completely aligned with my mission in life. And what we do is, our mission is to help youth transform negative behaviors and negative attitudes and live meaningful lives through the practice of mindfulness meditation and emotional awareness and intelligence. And our focus is on justice-involved youth, incarcerated youth, high-risk youth that are, not necessarily incarcerated but in the system. And we offer programs in the juvenile halls, we offer programs in the school system, and we offer programs in the community too, which is something we're kind of still building up right now. What our real goal is to build authentic relationships with young people to teach and practice mindfulness meditation and other self-awareness kind of contemplative skills with them, and to just build that community, empower young people to be agents of change in their communities. A lot of the young people we work with are young men of color and young women of color, and coming from very impoverished and intense neighborhood situations. A lot of the young people we work with are victims of trauma and victims of violence. A lot of the young men we work with are also perpetrators of violence. So we're really working with these young people who are, in a sense, metaphorically and physically castaways in the society. And we just view them as leaders in this world, as people who can transform themselves and transform the people around them. And we believe that that's real community activism, kind of from the inside out, so to speak. So we offer a number of different programs in the juvenile halls. Well, our main thing is our group-based curriculum, which is a 10-module curriculum that we offer in juvenile halls and also in the school districts that we work in. We mainly work in schools that are kind of continuing education, alternative schools that mainly kind of probation youth are housed in. They couldn't quite make it in the regular high school system. And we also do one-on-one counseling and one-on-one mentoring as well, to not only deepen the material that we talk about in the groups, that we present in the groups, but also really just build that one-on-one relationship and learn interpersonal communication and learn that relational mindfulness, how to talk to people when it's tense, how to talk to, how to bring up hard situations and really be skillful in that communication. And of course, we do a whole lot of formal meditation practice as well. Our curriculum is really dynamic. We do a lot of group process, a lot of experiential activities. Kind of our goal is to never have a bored moment in the class. I mean, we can't always achieve that, but one of the biggest things that we've found in our research and found anecdotally in our experiences is that a lot of these young people really enjoy our groups and enjoy our one-on-ones because we're engaging them in a way that is sensitive to their specific cultures and their specific vernacular. And that's really, a testament to our facilitators who, are just wonderful people that are committed to the deconstruction of oppression on the internal side, using mindfulness to do that, and also on the external side too. And we, we're a group of people that are very passionate about this work, myself included, and truly believe that the practice of mindfulness and other self-awareness skills have just that inherent power for transformation and that inherent ability to wake up some of these leadership qualities and other wonderful qualities that are in young people, and it's especially relevant in an age where, as a marginalized population, young people don't get, what they deserve in terms of the society listening to them and respecting their wisdom, even in some senses. So that's what the MBA project is about. It's about mindfulness. It's about relationship. It's about building together and creating that community where we can really practice together and empower ourselves and, in turn, our communities to be healthier.
That's one of the things I've admired about the MBA project in the years since I first discovered it, is the passion of the people behind it in running it, in contextualizing these practices to a demographic that typically doesn't get the attention, where it can be of so much tremendous use. Sam, your background story contributes directly to your initial involvement with mindfulness and the MBA project. Tell us about your experiences and where this passion for helping at-risk youth comes from.
My path really started when I was kind of a young teen, 13 years old, 12 years old, really in a lot of trauma, in a lot of suffering inside of myself, a lot of inner violence, and a lot of lashing out. And I found myself at the doorsteps and entering the juvenile hall as an incarcerated youth. And, I grew up, I didn't grow up as hard as a lot of my peers did. I had a mom and a dad, and I had resources. Certainly, I wasn't super rich or anything like that, but I managed to get in a whole bunch of trouble at a very young age, and was in and out of the juvenile hall about 7 or 8 times, with a lot of group homes and placements and things in between over the years of my early teens. And I saw a lot of suffering. And when I was also very young, I was very into martial arts, and I kind of used martial arts as a way to find some sort of self-discipline. And sometimes it worked out very well. Others, it was a little bit more exploiting, because I was in a lot of violent situations, and that served a certain purpose. But martial arts really took me to the doorstep of meditation at a very young age. It was people, mentors, giving me books to read, and I started meditating very, very young. I think the first time I formally meditated for a sustained period of time, not just like 10 minutes, but was meditating, whatever, a couple days a week or something like that, was when I was 14 years old. I had some powerful experiences, and, that alongside with seeing some of the real oppressive and social issues in this world by being incarcerated with people that, were coming from, for the most part at least, coming from really tough situations. It really kind of lit a spark in me. It wasn't till much later, in one of the group homes that I was at, that really I was able to turn my life around, with a lot of internal work, a lot of emotional development, also a lot of external help. My parents never gave up on me, and I'll never forget that part. And I was able to go back to school, continually get deeper into meditation, and just my interest in meditation and spirituality grew as kind of an older adolescent, in that kind of 16, 17-year-old range. And, I was finally able to catch up in credits and graduate high school. And when college was finally a reality for me, I jumped on the opportunity, struggled a little bit, but managed to get through it. And finally, right in the last summer of undergrad, I was given a book. And I had already committed myself to graduate school, and I had already committed myself to the path of clinical psychology, because I had two main passions in college, and one was meditation and working with people directly, and the other was kind of social psychology and wanting to deconstruct the prison industrial complex and stuff like that. But I had committed this path of working with people and committed to this path of meditation, and I was handed this book. I think it was actually the last quarter of college, not quite the summer. And the book was called Dharma Punks, written by Noah Levine, who was one of the founding members of the MBA project. And of course, I'm sure a lot of the listeners know, who may be familiar with that. It's a book about his life, but there's a page somewhere towards the end of the book where he just drops a one-liner about the MBA project. And this was at a time where, computers were big, so I was able to just look it up, and I kept a tab. I bookmarked the MBA project, and I just said, I know that I'm going to get involved with these guys one day. And right when I started graduate school, which was the next fall, I just sent an email to the executive director of the time, and I told him a little bit about myself, and I was trying to get involved, and they encouraged me to show up to, actually it was a merger meeting. They were merging with another kind of similar organization, and I met a bunch of people. I started volunteering and taking kids in the juvenile detention camp of San Francisco. They were on kind of a isolated, removed property that happened to be 600 acres, and I would go up there every Saturday and teach meditation and go on hikes and do yoga and stuff like that with them. And then I became, formally in the MBA project. I was offered the job of meditation instructor or MBA instructor. And I did that for many years in the Alameda County Juvenile Hall and the San Mateo County Juvenile Hall right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I that's really what got me to MBA. And I wore many hats here. I've been a program manager, was a director of research for a long time. And, when the opportunity came, when the past leadership decided to move on, it was just kind of a natural progression for me to step into a leadership role here, given, my past and given really my passion and expertise for wanting to continue to build with this community. So that's the short story. There's a lot of nooks and crannies of the story that I could go into if you wanted to know about that, but that's the short version. It's it's uh it's me standing on the shoulders of the people before me, and letting their grace shine through me. All the support that I've gotten, that's what really brought me here today, and I feel blessed to be in the position that I'm in.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask about, Sam, is you'd mentioned the support that you got from your parents and from others in your life. And I'm imagining that having had that experience, you're able to model that behavior and bring that to the youth that you work with. Are you finding that's been helpful to you in your work?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, a lot of these young people, like I've been saying, have been coming from tough situations, tough economic, tough family situations, and they may not have that person in their life that truly is consistent and cares and wants to continually show up. And I was lucky enough to have that. And one of the things that, was transmitted to me in my parents continually showing up, in a couple of mentors continually showing up, was that it's meaningful, it's powerful, it's real transmission, and that impacted me to such a high level. And I believe that if I can even do that for a few moments with a young person, if I can be there and be a consistent person in their life, let alone all this meditation stuff, which is great, but just being there and building that authentic relationship. I mean, there's so much healing that goes into that, because it's a real relationship, and it's not like you're friends with the young person all the time. It's, things get tense sometimes, and you learn to work it out, and you teach them to work it out, and you model how to work it out in kind of a healthy way. And that, alongside with a lot of these people who don't have good self-regulation skills, learning those skills can be a very powerful combination. So to me, it's the therapy skill that I could never learn in graduate school, and I could only learn from a strong line of people and ancestors and mentors that kind of developed that spark in me to really believe in the power of the relationship.
Yeah, and you used a wonderful word to describe that authentic relationship. That's so very critical, because we're creatures who evolved to see patterns and to recognize these things. And the sincerity of that engagement is a tremendous asset in working really with anyone, but especially in a situation where trust itself is maybe a little hard to come by.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the saddest things that I hear routinely with this population in the juvenile hall is when we start to talk about trust, and they tell me that they don't trust anybody. Some people even don't trust their families because of how deep in the lifestyle they are. And building an authentic, and of course there's a lot of young people who don't get those authentic relationships, let alone that authentic, adult adolescent relationship. And it's the number one thing that I train my staff to do. I mean, we can talk at another time, like you said, about my book, but just to give you a sense of how I train my staff, my book is all about relating on an authentic level, and the teaching of actual meditation is the last chapter. It's the last piece. The base of this work is developing those authentic relationships with the young people so that we can build something real with them, And that's how I train my staff. And I'll tell you, like, it really does work. I mean, it's once you get that momentum going, I mean, the youth in the juvenile hall start talking about you and talking about your program kind of authentically to the staff, and the energy just kind of gets in the field that this is something that they're receptive to. And that's a big milestone, because if you open up a textbook about working with high risk and incarcerated adolescents, the first thing you learn about is how treatment resistant they are. But when you go in there and treat them like a human being, I mean, who would have thought? They are really they're really open, and just some young, wonderful beautiful people that, of course, have problems like everybody else and need guidance at times, but have a lot of inner wisdom that is just not respected. So when you're building an authentic relationship, the adult tends to respect the adolescent a lot more, and plants a lot of seeds that can grow into to wonderful qualities, to wonderful actions. So it's very important.
Yeah, as you were describing that, I was thinking this is the sprouting of the seeds that you plant even as you start working with them, that the tendrils go out and the other kids hear about it. And respect and compassion, who'd have thunk it? that would help. I can't imagine why that would be such a foreign idea. And it's so good to see this going in actual practice with sincere engagement with others. That's great to see. So, Sam, you also mentioned something about your forebears in this and the people that you learned from. And I took a look at the mbaproject.org site, and I wanted you to chat for a few minutes about some of the training that you have available to help grow this, to help with that continuity of teaching.
Yeah, we at the MBA Project, we offer public trainings to mental health professionals, to teachers, to people in the healing, mentoring, facilitation world who are dedicated to working with this population and are interested in bringing self-awareness and mindfulness skills to the table. And we do that. I love teaching, and I love training and working with people. So we offer trainings where we're actually offering trainings over the summer and into the fall, just on introductory skills of how to relate to youth, how to teach mindfulness. How to work with resistance when resistance arises, because it's always going to arise, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not, if you change your paradigm about it, life will be a lot easier. And also some of the core issues that we see, like, for example, substance abuse and substance dependence, it's a big issue. And so we're putting together some trainings about that, and people can go to our website that you mentioned and click on training and find out about that. We teach mindfulness in a very secular way. Not that some of the conversations with the youth don't get extra spiritual, but we present it secularly in a very pragmatic way, along with other types of self-awareness skills. And, the biggest thing I could say to plug it is, if you come to a training like that, you can expect to do a lot of experiential work on yourself, because when I train my staff, and like we're talking about, who would have thought it? Authenticity, respect, compassion. It's hard for some adults. It's hard for some psychotherapists and clinicians, whether you got your training in graduate school or whether you have, the conditioning that you've had your whole life. It's really a lot of pulling back and looking at our own conditioning and relating on multiple levels. And that type of mindfulness is really what's going to make you more authentic, make you more self-aware, make you be able to skillfully respond when resistance does arise, so that you're modeling how to deal with something like that, let alone doing a good intervention. So it's kind of our way to share what we do with the community, because as I'm sure a lot of other nonprofits, as I'm sure they work in the same way. We're super busy. We're in the grit and the grind of getting funding to make these programs work, and we're working with the youth. So we don't get too much time to have meet and greets with other organizations and nonprofits. And it's a way to support the organization and just build that community. So that's what our intention is for offering those trainings. And I believe we have about 4 listed for the summer and fall, and we definitely are going to expand that and keep doing that into 2014 in the future. So
you'd mentioned that the effects of this sincerity, of this honesty in these engagements, as being transformative to you, the practitioner. What are some of the other rewarding aspects for you of doing this work?
Well, I can answer that on a couple of levels. I'll just say first that, just to contextualize it, I'll say first that for me, this is a spiritual practice. You know, working with young people um, and teaching them mindfulness and learning from them, I've never felt more present in my life. Whereas when I sit on the cushion and meditate, I continually call on my awareness or attention to come back to some object or whatever, even if it's just awareness. When I'm in the room with young people, most of the time, I don't have to call on that awareness. It's just there. And I think I'm, fulfilling some archetypal something in my life right now. So it's a spiritual practice for me. So that says a lot in terms of the benefit for me personally. But I use the practice as a way to continually check in with myself and continually practice mindfulness and self-awareness. And because it's a practice, working with youth, because it's a practice like mindfulness, and because it's very spiritual for me, it brings a lot of meaning in my life. It's not that it's the only aspect of my identity, but it's something big. I find that when I wake up in the morning, I feel very honored and lucky to spend my day, talking to people on podcasts like you and scheming about how we can do this work better and relating with young people and learning from them and meditating. I'm blessed to be able to come into work every day and sit on my cushion and practice, 10 or 20 minutes of mindfulness, So for me, it's just an all around enhanced well-being. Not that it's not challenging at times, not that it's not tough and stressful at times, especially as the executive director, but it brings a sense of authenticity to my life and an alignment in my mission in life that I just can't really express how wonderful it is. And I think another piece to it, which is for me, but also I've seen in my staff, and I think I can speak for them when I say this, is just, when you're in this work, you got to be on your toes. If you're teaching mindfulness and self-awareness and emotional intelligence and emotional regulation and how to build authentic relationships and literally compassion and kindness, when you're teaching that, when you hold the responsibility to be the facilitator or the mentor or the counselor, you got to be on your own toes and do your own work and heal yourself and look at your own trauma and your own wounds. And there's a inherent benefit in that, obviously, to bringing up my own mental health and emotional health and spiritual health. And I've seen that even in the last 6 months with we just recruited a new batch of MBA instructors. And even in the last 6 months, they have talked about that. And it's a beautiful thing. So that's really one of the best benefits for me in doing this work.
And I imagine for anyone who ends up working with MBA Project, you particularly see a much larger change and a greater proliferation of a brightness of futures in the people whose lives they touch, in how much of a change it is for them from the trajectory they were on, than, say, working with folks who are in not such a bad situation, who are in part of a program, say an MBSR program for anxiety or stress relief or something like that, which is still very good and beneficial. But with what you're doing, there's an orders of magnitude greater personal change in the people that you're working with in the trajectory of their lives.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the work all around is good, and you're going to get people in every field, whether they're doing an MBSR class for anxiety or whether they're talking about forgiveness and compassion in an incarcerated context, that have transformative experiences. But the reason why I do this work is because I've seen it firsthand of young people telling me stories of transformation that have really impacted their lives and their thinking too. It's like you can't always expect the kid to get out of jail and then go back to the same situation and be a stellar law-abiding citizen if they got to hustle and sell drugs to help their mom make rent. But when you see those types of big, larger paradigm shifts from the world is a messed up place and, it's all about kill or be killed, You see a paradigm shift from something like that to something that's a little bit more open, a little bit more sensitive to things like kindness and compassion and love. That's a profound thing to have a conversation and dialogue about with a young person in that situation. I mean, I have, let me know when you want to hear a story that may bring tears to your eyes, because I got 100 of them.
Now's a perfect time. Give us one story that impacted you deeply. And you don't have to share names or specifics, but give us an outline of one of those stories.
I'm going to tell you a story actually that one of my instructors told me. And I have many personal stories too, but this is the one that has really impacted me. And to me, there's so much power to it. And sometimes I tear up when I say it. So forgive me if I do that. I just think it speaks to the power of the story. An instructor of mine is teaching a meditation class in the juvenile hall. And there's for some reason tonight there's a smaller group. I think about 4 or 5 kids. Usually there's like 6, 8, 10, something like that. And sometimes at the end of the class we do metta meditations. We do loving kindness and compassion meditations. And there's one particular kid in the class who is a very, very high-ranking gang member in a very, very serious gang out here in California. Not a gang that you can just choose to get out of. It's kind of you're in for life, or they'll come after you kind of thing. He was 16 years old, and he was an extremely high-ranking gang member. And they're doing this practice at the end of the class with only a few minutes left, and it's a kind of a standard practice. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. That kind of self-kindness, self-compassion practice, and the visualization that's attached on that. And my instructor told me that when he was doing the meditation, he kind of had the 1 foot in, 1 foot out experience. So he was facilitating the meditation, but also being aware of the group, something I trained them to do. And he noticed that with only a couple of seconds before he was going to ring the bell, this particular youth, the high-ranking 16-year-old gang member, kind of like came to in a very sudden way. His eyes were closed, and he just kind of like popped out of the meditation, and it was like kind of a shock to his system. So the instructor rung the bell, and then he processed with the group like we always do. We always ask him what was that like for them and so forth. And he turned to this particular young man and said, I noticed that you popped out of that meditation pretty quick, and I was just wondering if you were okay, what was going on with you, what was that experience like? And this is what the young man said. He said, I just had a vision, and I could see myself when I was meditating. He said, when I said, may I be happy, I literally saw myself as a young 2-year-old playing with blocks on the floor. And then when he said, may I be healthy, I could see myself back in my neighborhood on my block with my joint of weed, joint of marijuana in my hand. And right when I said, may I be healthy, I noticed myself flicking the marijuana, flicking the joint away and walking away from it. And then he said, when I said, may I be safe, I noticed myself on my block in my neighborhood again, and I noticed that I had my gun in my pants. And immediately when I said, may I be safe, I took the gun out and I threw it away in the garbage and walked away. So then the group ended, and my instructor was on the verge of tears, and he came and told me that story, and I started crying, of course. But that right there, I mean, you're talking about a high-ranking gang member, only 16 years old, but lived lifetimes of trauma and oppression, transgenerational trauma, families, the gang, everything's gun violence, everything. And he had this experience, you know what I'm saying? He had this experience where even for just a moment, his paradigm shifted, and he could pivot away from that violence in such a way and be more kind and compassionate to himself. And that just struck me as something so powerful. that a kid coming from that traumatized of a background, you know, both literally physically traumatized, but also the oppression that he's dealt with and the societal conditions that have brought him to where he is today. That that type of thought, even, you know what I'm saying? Like that to me is amazing. It had me in awe. I'm in awe right now. I could feel the chills on my body as I even speak about it right now. And some people have always asked me, or, not after that story, because most people feel affected by that story like me, but some people say, like, what's the point with a kid like that? This particular kid was actually on his way to the penitentiary, charged for a serious crime and going to the penitentiary, not for life, but for about 5 years. And they said, what's the point, man? Like, why would you work with somebody like that? And I said, you know, that kid is 16 years old. Even if he was doing 10 years, even 10 years, that kid's going to be out of jail when he's freaking 28 years old. You know what I'm saying? 28, still a life ahead of him. And by having that experience, he himself, not even us, we can't take credit for that, but he himself planted a seed within himself that may grow in various ways along that path when he's in the penitentiary, and grow in various ways when he gets out. And that was just so profound to me, that even in all the mud, the lotus can still form. Not to get extra spiritual on you, but even with the kid who's going that deep into the complex, into the institutionalization of prison, he could get out and something can still happen. And to me, it was such a success story because it was that paradigm shift. And it was, only for a few moments. And it's something that, he's going to have to go back to the way he views the world in such a certain way to survive prison. But that experience is still going to be there. He's going to be able to reflect on it. He's going to be able to water that seed. He's going to be able to have dreams about it. And that's some of the most powerful stuff. I mean, I got a lot of success stories about kids going to college and all that stuff, and it's wonderful. But even the ones who are really have a tough road ahead of them, I just see a lot of hope. So that story stands out to me as something real.
That's a wonderful story, Sam. And the thing that I like best about this is it wasn't merely opening a door. It was creating a door that didn't exist before that moment and opening it. And playing a part of that is really what MBA Project is about, is creating that opening and that opportunity for someone to take that other direction and make that turn. Sam, what are some of the challenges that you face as a mindfulness organization for at-risk youth?
Well, just on that nonprofit level, we're part of that nonprofit game, and part of my job as the executive director is to get us funding so we can be in operation, and we're doing that, and it's great. And that's also a challenge. That's a job to do. The way you worded that, as a mindfulness organization, the funny thing is, I don't feel the mindfulness component is the challenging thing. Some of our sister organizations or some of my colleagues that work in elementary schools with young kids, they face a lot of scrutiny from parents about mindfulness. But one of the things that's important to remember is, we're working with a population that people don't want to work with, first of all, that any type of treatment that these young people are in any sense receptive to. I mean, we're getting, on the one hand, welcomed with open arms by institutions like, wow, this is something that we can build on, On the other hand, though, of course, there's challenges, big challenges, everyday challenges. Working in an institution is, even though the director of the institution and pretty much everyone collectively is bought into us being there, there's still things to navigate. There's logistical issues to navigate. There's not every correctional officer is bought into the idea that even mental health is something good for these young people. You still have your people that are just very punishment based. So interacting with them and getting them to, not talk extremely yet loud and yell at some other youth right outside the door when we're meditating is a process. And it's something that I train my staff to do as well, to build with them and to build relationships with them, because we're all part of this collective system, and it's really going to be changing it from the inside out to bring any traction to it. And it's the same things in the school district. It all comes down to relationships and building authentic relationships with our collaborators as well, so that we can provide our programming the way that we see fit, that we can really flex our expertise in how to do this work and not necessarily just fit into a puzzle piece that doesn't really work for us and for young people. And at the same time, we're certainly open. We collaborate with our partners, and we don't just go in there like, these are our demands, but we try to build. We try to build community, and sometimes that can be hard. And that's really one of the major challenges that we face. It's definitely not. A lot of people ask me, what's it like to teach gangbangers meditation? Are they even that stuff? Definitely not that. That is not a challenge. Like I said before, you treat young people like human beings. You build authentic relationships with them, and they'll be open to a lot of curriculum that you have to offer, including meditation. It's the institutional side, the bureaucratic side, the sometimes getting the guards and the adults to buy in. But at the same time, it's like people realize that we have a niche and an expertise of working with this very kind of underserved and discarded population. So it all depends on who we're interacting with, but sometimes, with line staff on the ground level, it can be challenging. Most of the time at the top of the bureaucracy, they're very bought into what we do. But it's all about getting that to be formally acknowledged through contracts and agreements. And we've done that, and we're continuing to do that and expand and just make our services more comprehensive and deeper and more impactful to the community that we'd like to serve. So that's really what comes to mind when I think about challenges. Certainly there's resistance that comes up in the group at times, but like I was telling you earlier, I train my staff to switch their paradigm on resistance, to not try to avoid it, to not try to eliminate it, to welcome it, because it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to look at how people relate to the world. And when we shine the light on that, and then we're doing a level of mindfulness that, a lot of people, even mindfulness practitioners, rarely get a chance to do. So that's there, but like I said, and it's not that it's easy to work with resistance. Sometimes it can be very difficult, but also very rewarding. So that's why that's not the first thing that comes to my mind when I talk about challenges that the organization faces.
You have a lot on your plate, and I'm wondering, how can people, maybe some listening to the podcast, folks who are interested, how can they help?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple of ways that come to mind. I mean, one of the things that we're doing is building kind of a small to medium sized donor base. And what I mean by that is small to medium amounts, where we're going to be putting a lot of stuff on our website in the future about, $150, $200 sends a kid on a 3-day retreat. One of the first things somebody can do is contribute something like that. Of course, we welcome all contributions. The bigger, don't get me wrong, if you want to contribute more, my arms are open to that. But it's a way for people who maybe don't have that much money or don't have that much funds that they can allocate away to really be involved and be a part of a young person getting a 10-week mindfulness class or a 3-day or a 5-day retreat. And it's very pragmatic too. You don't have to be a millionaire to contribute in that way. Another thing too is literally connect with us. I make it a point, and I tell my director of operations, who manages our info@nbaproject.org email, to forward me emails of people who are looking to connect. And I read every single one of those emails. Sometimes it takes me a long time to get back to it because I'm super busy, but I read all of them and I respond to as many of them that I can. And some people just want to, get sent some of the PDFs of the research articles that we have. And other people want to create a dialogue about how to do this work. I've had people visit me from Japan. I've had people visit me from Scotland, all over the world, just because they literally emailed me and said, I want to know more about this work and I want to get involved, and we'll come and we'll meet, and you never know what can happen. Locally, obviously, we are going to have some volunteer opportunities come out, and we definitely have our trainings on our website, which is another way to support the organization financially, but also go away with something, concrete tools and training that they can take into their work. So for me, those are the main ways to get involved. I mean, this is a social world. Mindfulness is, to me, really a social practice. I mean, I think one of the people who I really feel strongly about is John Kabat-Zinn, and he came to one of my trainings actually at the conference, one of the conferences that we met at in Massachusetts, and he heard my whole training on relationship, and he was very impressed with it, and he kind of from the back of the room said, mindfulness is all about relationship to the breath, relationship to emotion. And I would even go as far to expand that to say it's about relationship to other people as well. And that's what I'm all about, is creating that social network. So, donate, volunteer, email me, come train with us, come build. That's what we're really about, is building this community. And, I have a dream of at some point trying to connect all these wonderful organizations with similar missions. About, we talked about some of those other organizations in Massachusetts and Cincinnati, New York, and we really, I really love that. That excites me, building some type of a network where we're all getting together or talking on some, consistent or semi-consistent basis. But so yeah, that's what comes to mind when I think about how people can get involved.
Yeah, and that participation, that involvement just echoes, as John had said in your training at the scientific conference, that this is about relationships. Our practice isn't about what we do on the cushion. It's about what we take off the cushion into the world.
Absolutely.
So Sam, you also have a book that just came out within the past few months called A Mindfulness-Based Approach to Working with High-Risk Adolescents. I hope you come back to speak with us specifically about that, and maybe again on some of the research that you have on the MBA project. So I hope you'll come back and join us soon.
Absolutely, Ted. I would be honored to.
That would be terrific. So for folks listening to the podcast, the website is www.mbaproject.org to see more about their work. Our guest today has been Sam Himelstein. Sam, thanks for being with us on Present Moment.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Today's quote is from Sam Himelstein's new book, A Mindfulness-Based Approach to Working with High-Risk Adolescents. I believe the single most important aspect of working with this population is viewing them as human beings. If you get caught up in treating them like children, stripping them of autonomy and independence, which they are striving so hard for in this life stage, your attempts at facilitating true growth will ultimately fail. Adolescents are searching for connections with adults who trust their experience and wisdom as truth. They're not looking for someone to tell them that what they've been doing is wrong. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice, make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.